I'm sorry.
Mr. President. I know you said there'll be a time for politics, but you've also said you wanted to change the tone of Washington. Howard Dean recently seemed to muse aloud whether you had advanced knowledge of 9/11. Do you agree or disagree with the RNC that this kind of rhetoric borders on political hate speech?
Yeah. Look, there's time for politics. And, it's time for politics. And it's an absurd insinuation.
In that case, sir, can I follow up on something unrelated?
I'm a rider, baby. So let's ride. Let's go. Look. Yeah, I know the world is corrupt. It's been a long time focusing on money so much they kill their own kind. Plenty destruction, the government just let us die. Denying everything, but they lying every time. The wars we fight not always right, and I don't mind questioning something that involves my life. Cause if I die, I wanna die for something. If 9/11 a lie, that mean y'all die for nothing. I know something's wrong, cause something smell fishy. You can look into their eyes until they try and get me out the way. But I bet I never move. I'm watching every move, protected by who? Not you. I'm cool, not knowing who to trust. Stop trusting everybody to my body in the dust. There's a lot we gotta learn. Unless you're not concerned, then please take a seat. You will see it burn. Let's go, let's go.
Southern Tower, 10 o'clock Eastern Time this morning, just collapsing on itself. This is a place where thousands of people work. We have no idea what caused this. If you wish to bring anybody who's ever watched a building being demolished on purpose knows that if you're going to do this, you have to get at the under infrastructure of a building and bring it down.
First, let the technical truths emerge. Then, if necessary, cope with the inevitable conspiracy and other questions. Buildings tend to fall over. They don't fall straight down through the path of greatest resistance. Buildings tend to fall over. This is a controlled demolition. Typically, a tall building like this is demolished by placing thousands of cutter charges throughout the columns and beams, detonating them in a very precise order. This is a controlled demolition. Synchronistically timed, floor by floor, detonating them in a very precise order. This is a controlled demolition. Synchronistically timed, floor by floor. This is a controlled demolition. So the result is an implosion. This is a controlled demolition. So the result is an implosion. This is a controlled demolition. We have straight down symmetrical collapse into its own footprint. This is a controlled demolition. This is what a high-rise looks like when it's being demolished with explosives. This is a controlled demolition. We have straight down symmetrical collapse into its own footprint. This is a controlled demolition. This is a controlled demolition. Synchronistically timed, floor by floor. This is a controlled demolition. So the result is an implosion. This is a controlled demolition. This is what a high-rise looks like when it's being demolished with explosives. This is a controlled demolition. This is a controlled demolition. This is what a high-rise looks like when it's being demolished with explosives. This is a controlled demolition. This is a controlled demolition. This is a controlled demolition.
Experienced in steel structures, now Richard Gage is touring the country with a controversial message about September 11th.
Richard Gage is here to show us why he's calling for a more thorough investigation into the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.
Well, first of all, give us a little bit more about your background.
Well, I'm an architect of 20 years, a member of the American Institute of Architects, and have been studying steel-framed, fireproof buildings for about that long.
You come with some science to you. What is the official reason for the collapse of the World Trade Center towers?
Well, we're told that the planes hit the buildings, and there was an explosion and a fire, and about an hour and a half later, in the case of the North Tower, the buildings collapsed due to structural weakening due to the fires. The problem is that we don't have large gradual deformations associated with collapses, and fires in high-rises have never brought down a steel frame high-rise building at all, ever. And what we have, unfortunately, is the evidence in the Twin Towers and the third skyscraper to collapse that day, which most people don't know anything about it. We have the evidence of the 10 key features of controlled demolition. In the case of Building 7, it collapses straight down into its own footprint.
This is a controlled demolition. We have straight down symmetrical collapse into its own footprint. This is a controlled demolition. Fires affect buildings quite differently than controlled demolition. Typically, a tall building like this is demolished by placing thousands of cutter charges throughout the columns and beams. First, let the technical truths emerge. Then, if necessary, cope with the inevitable conspiracy and other questions.
Free fall speed in the first 100 feet. It's dropping, as you can see, symmetrically, smoothly, at free fall speed in the first 100 feet, 2.5 seconds. This is uncanny. There's 40,000 tons of structural steel designed to resist this collapse.
Is it, what, a 47-story building?
Yeah, it's just called Building 7, right a football field away from the Twin Towers.
Okay, so what we're showing is left what happened. In fact, right is a controlled where you are using, or the people who made this happen, used demolition.
Indeed, and this is a direct comparison. And you can see that free fall speed, free fall acceleration through 40,000 tons of structural steel. That is uncanny. So we have 700 architects and engineers demanding a new investigation as a result of this evidence and the evidence in the World Trade Center. That is very explosive. Almost every architect and engineer we show this information to agrees with us that these are controlled demolitions. If we can get them to look at the information, because obviously the implications of a controlled demolition are dark for our country, because that means somebody besides Al-Qaeda was involved, because these have to be easily 3 of the most highly secure buildings outside the Pentagon.
Now, if that was
It's an absurd insinuation.
In that case, sir, can I follow up on something unrelated?
I'm a rider, baby. So let's ride. Let's go. Look. Yeah, I know the world is corrupt. It's been a long time focusing on money so much they kill their own kind. Plenty of destruction. The government just let us die. Denying everything, but they lying every time. The wars we fight not always right. And no mind pressing the sun that involves my life is a long time. I'm never letting a lie. I mean, y'all down for nothing. I know something's wrong. Something smell fishy. You can look into their eyes until they try to get me out the way. But I bet I never know. I'm watching never know. Protected by him, not know. I'm poor, and I know I need to trust. Like trusting everybody to my body and it does. There's a lot that I know. Unless you're not concerned, then please take a seat. You will see it burn. Let's go, let's go.